now. I've said it 15 times already today. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is going to announce a further 2p cut to national insurance when he delivers his spring budget today. It's in just an hour's time. It's going to leave 27 million workers £450 a year better off. It comes after another 2p cut in the national insurance last November. Amazingly, we know this in advance from the Chancellor's statement, highly unusual. We are going to bring you that budget statement live here on TalkTV at 12:30. Joining me right now to discuss this and what else we can expect in the budget is the former First Minister of Scotland and Alba party leader. That is Alex Salmond. Good morning to you, Alex.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, let's talk about what's on the front pages of all the papers, 2p cut in national insurance. We're asking everybody today, what could the Chancellor announce in his budget that would sway your vote? An awful lot of people are coming back and just saying, well, not another 2p cut in national insurance, because I'm still not going to be better off than I was a few years ago. I know you're not going to vote Tory, but would that be enough to sway a lot of voters, do you think?
I'm just going to reveal to you exclusively there is nothing Jeremy Hunt can do to get my vote. He's lost my vote. The dreadful man.
He'll be gutted.
But I have to say that, listening in the last few minutes to some of the reactions you've had, I mean, they've seen right through him, haven't they? The 400 quid or so for people on average incomes from a national insurance cut, and that gets swallowed up by council tax rises. And of course, the fact that the people are paying thousands more for their mortgages at the present moment, thousands more. I mean, totally out of a scale of a modest tax cut. So there's two things. One, I think Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, I think on their political tombstone will be two words, and these are Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, who's pursued a lunatic interest rate policy, first of all, not forecasting a rise of inflation, which everybody else in the world realised was coming, and then going in for the successive rise in interest rates, which have cost the average homeowner thousands of pounds, which make it impossible for young people to get on the housing ladder, and which have destroyed small businesses, the length and breadth of the country. And if you think you can salve that injury by giving folk a few £100 that you'll promptly take back in other tax rises, is lunatic. And that obviously cannot be the only thing that's in the budget. Otherwise, the Tories might just as well have the election and be done with it.
I want to come on to possible dates. I want to come on to possible dates of elections. Obviously, that would be relevant to you as well as the other party leader. But I was suggesting earlier to Lord Hayward, who's a Tory peer and, of course, a pollster, he's always got two different hats on that, whether or not that there'll be something bigger than that. So a lot of talk about whether it's national insurance cut or an income tax cut. Could it be that he's also going to announce a 1p or even 2p basic rate income tax cut? Do you think that is even likely? Is there this awful phrase, fiscal headroom for that?
Well, there's not really, of course, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. I mean, I would have to say there must be something else he's keeping up his sleeve. I mean, I know that Jeremy Hunt is not the most flamboyant of performers, but even so, you don't sort of release the headline in your budget 2 or 3 days beforehand. There has to be something else there politically. The difficulty is twofold. One is that if you look at the projections of tax as a percentage of national income, then regardless of a 2p cut or even another 2p of income tax, it's still going to hit a record post-war record in about 3-4 years' time. By the end of this decade, it's going to go right back to where it was in 1945-46, about 37%, after fighting a world war. Back in the days of the halcyon days of high Toryism, Mr Thatcher reduced it to 30%. So, in other words, this government is taxing people more than any government, including Attlee's Labour government, in the
people feel it.
People
aren't stupid. They know it. And this is the thing, a little bit money here, a little bit money there. People know. A lot of people are saying, and I know certainly voters on lower incomes and actually an awful lot of people who are just having to deal with these particular public services like the NHS say they would rather that money was spent on improving public services than they would a personal tax cut, even if they might benefit from it. What would you say to that?
Well, quite right too, because the Chancellor can't get away with this deception of saying, I'm going to cut your taxes. Well, everybody knows they're actually rising. And of course, the other interesting thing is, where is he going to tell the markets he's funding these 2p national insurance cut from? Now, the suggestion is it's going to be an extension of the windfall tax on oil and gas. So it'll be Scotland's resources financing Jeremy Hunt's political survival. But there's a magnificent report in the National this morning which talks of a a stand-up fight between Douglas Ross, the Tory party leader, and Rishi Sunak at a Downing Street reception on Monday night, with Ross threatening to resign. Now, why it's magnificent, of course, I don't want to be upset all of your political correct viewers, of which there are about 2, I think. And I don't want to be sizist in this, but Douglas Ross and Rishi Sunak have many things in common, one of which are 2 quite diminutive figures. And the idea of a stand-up fight between the 2 of them, I mean, they both would have to have stilts to engage in such a thing. We Douglas Ross is complaining to the Prime Minister, eyeball to eyeball, that they're going to finance a tax cut out of an extension of windfall taxes, which of course won't go down well in some of the few seats that the Tories hold in Scotland. And there is the problem, of course. If you're extending windfall tax on oil, then what you should be doing with the money is saving Grangemouth refinery, putting major investment into industrial infrastructure. You should be making sure that the transition to the green revolution actually doesn't cost jobs but gains jobs. I mean, that's the sort of investment criteria.
Yeah, trouble with that, you can't do that. And as you know, a huge number of jobs in Scotland, highly paid jobs, reliant on that fossil fuel industry. Oh, by the way, small point worth making, the entire British economy is reliant on all of that fossil fuel industry as well. Let me bring you to the date of the next election. I'm sure you're very keen to have an election as soon as possible. We know Labour are, they're sky high in the polls. I imagine probably even parties like Reform UK, the Lib Dems, are pretty keen on it as well. Tories, though, absolutely terrified of the amount of losses they're going to be making. There's no doubt at all, no matter what happens, there will be a lot of Tory MPs out on their ears worrying about paying their mortgages. Do you think that what has been announced so far, what we could hear in the spring budget in an hour's time, do you think that makes a spring election across the UK, May the 2nd most likely, more likely than an October or November election? Or do you think the government is still going to try and hold on for the, events, dear boy, events? We're so far down in the polls, we'll hold out. Something might happen that will push us back up. Which do you think's likely?
Well, it'd be lunatic for the Tories to call an early election. I mean, if people are faced with the prospect of dying in 4 weeks' time or delaying their mortality to the end of the year, then everybody chooses the end of the year, obviously. So I don't think there's going to be an early election. And of course, there is just this glimmer. I mean, the Tories are so totally ham-fisted that in that major brouhaha about the Speaker last week, they didn't realise that the proper target wasn't the hapless Lindsay Hoyle. The proper target was Sir Keir Starmer. Because if they'd actually managed to pin on Starmer that he was blackmailing the Speaker, if they'd managed to make that stick, then that's the sort of serious upset that could have dented Starmer's prospects. I mean, let's remember that the by-election in England last week in Rochdale taught us one thing, and that is that Labour's hold over its voters is not incredibly strong at the present moment. So, although Starmer's lead looks totally unassailable at the present moment, there's just that nagging hope that if they could extend things, there may be weaknesses in the Starmer shield. But of course, you have to have the political competence to enable to seize such an opportunity. And it has to be said that the Tories have got themselves into a low-growth equilibrium. There's nothing sensible you can do economically that squares the circle of trying to convince voters you're on the right track and do what's good for the economy. If Hunt looks like he's going to do neither, he's going to put out some bribes that are relatively meaningless, and everybody knows they're election bribes, which of course is the worst of all things to do. Right. So I doubt, I think the economy is going to sink the Tories. Not so much a case of the economy stupid, as the stupid Tories getting sunk by the economy.
Okay, this is why he's Alex Salmond. I'm going to ask you, since you did do a comment on the diminutive nature of our Prime Minister and others, what do you make of Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson's comments on Times Radio, where it's on his podcast, I think, where he talked to, because all the new Labour people are back, aren't they? People who got us in a lot of this mess in the first place. He was talking about how he thinks that Keir Starmer should lose some of the weight that he's put on, certainly, I think, on the Coronation Chicken circuit over recent months and years, and that he should lose weight. He's been hit back at by Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, saying he shouldn't fat shame him. He shouldn't have shouldn't go on about his paunch. What do you make of that, Alex Salmond?
Well, just occasionally in social media and elsewhere, people say that I should be losing lots of weight. It's not just in social media that, that I get told that. And, that, they're absolutely correct. So I should. But I just have so little time for people who get offended or mock offence because somebody else has made a commentary on them. I just think it's one of the great difficulties in modern society of full outrage at this, that, and the next thing. And of course, if you're in politics, you have to take the heat, whatever it is.
Indeed.
And if you can't stand the heat, whether it's because somebody describes you as diminutive or somebody describes you as portly, then the solution is pretty obvious.
I would say if you can't stand the heat, put down the pizza and get out of the kitchen. Former First Minister of Scotland, Labour Party leader, which I know I've mispronounced for the 18th time, Alex Salmond, thank you so much for joining. He always tells me off.